This was 25-year-old Yuna, a corporate zombie, but at this job, he was more like a slave. His bosses constantly abused and exploited him. It was already midnight, and he was still being forced to work. You can tell how overworked anime office workers are just by looking at their beards. The manager even grabbed his head while demanding more work. The only thing Yuna ever enjoyed in that world was playing games at home, after literally working himself to death. That day, the manager snatched Yuna's phone by force and deleted his most valuable game account. If that had been me, the guy would have caught a right hook on the spot. Back home, Yuna looked like a stray dog. He lived like a corporate zombie, until one day at the office he blinked, and when he opened his eyes, there was a giant rat-like creature right in front of him. The monster clawed at his body, forcing him to run for his life. Honestly, that would be one of the worst nightmares imaginable. A giant rat chasing you through your own house. Then he spotted a door ahead, just like in the game. That meant one of the game's dungeons had appeared in reality, or maybe he had been transported into the dungeon's world. We don't know for sure. Looking ahead, he saw an altar with a book resting on top. It was Ludian's Thousand Nights Travel Diary. That was an item NPCs used in the game. Those guys were always throwing crazy parties. At that moment, Yuna felt like an idiot for putting up with that manager for so long. Then the book began to glow before his eyes. Here comes the power-up, boys. He felt his body heating up and suddenly transformed into a little witch. If it were a girl with that look, I'd say she's pretty cute. But anyway, he obtained the legendary Playboy class. At first, he thought it was just a hidden class. Meanwhile, the giant rat monster was pounding on the door, but Yuna was completely lost in his own thoughts. That was when the monster smashed the door down, and the battle finally began. With the power of the legendary Playboy, Yuna unleashed the magic system of the legendary witch. The creature stares at the young player, ready for the imminent battle. He convinces himself that if this is truly Vanaheim, there must be a way to fight. With that, the young man throws a small stone at the monster to test his theory. The creature, however, dodges the attack effortlessly and advances. Then, the monster leaps toward him, launching another attack with its claws. The young man then realizes that small stones like that obviously wouldn't work. Still, he decides to try a new approach with more stones at once. This time, all the attacks hit the monster in critical spots, dealing damage. He confirms that just as he thought, his luck was the only abnormally high attribute in his stats. The young man understands that if he increases the number of attacks, he can land critical hits more easily. With this idea, he grabs a sharp fragment and notices his attack power has increased. Then, the young man screams and charges straight at the creature. With a direct hit, he strikes the monster squarely with another critical attack. The monster begins to dissolve into particles of light until it disappears completely. As soon as the creature vanishes, he celebrates his victory and gets a notification that he has leveled up. Checking his stats, the young man sees that all his attributes have increased with the win. Excited, he realizes this is the power of a playboy and that he can actually fight. With that, Yuma decides he will definitely make it out of this place alive. If this really was a Vanaheim dungeon, he could escape if he defeated the boss. Suddenly, another person appears in the same hallway. With a confident smile, the man slowly approaches him. Yuma recalls being attacked by several Glenfangs, but he defeated them easily thanks to his high level. Since he knew the monster's attack patterns perfectly, he managed to advance without any trouble. Reaching a larger door, the young man deduces it must be the boss room. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out to him, and he turns to see who it is. The man comments that it looks like Yuma is doing quite well in here. Recognizing the voice, the young man backs away, completely paralyzed with fear. It was his boss, who explains that the company turned into a dungeon, but that there was a silver lining. With an air of superiority, Totsuka boasts that he's already a level 6 warrior after defeating a few monsters. Not knowing what to say, Yuma just watches him in silence, still shocked by the situation. Uncaring, Totsuka orders Yuma to be bait for the boss, so he can attack while the monster is distracted. Before the young man can reply, his boss starts yelling at him again. Totsuka bellows that a boss's word is absolute and must be obeyed. He then kicks him into the room, telling him to hurry up and follow his orders. As he falls to the ground, the young man notices a huge shadow forming over him. With that, the dungeon boss, a giant Glenfang, appears before him, ready to strike. The creature then prepares a powerful claw attack against him. Narrowly dodging, Yuma screams his boss's name in complete desperation. From outside, Totsuka tells him to hurry up and get eaten so the creature will lower its guard. Following the same logic, the monster says it's a subordinate's job to die for their boss. Then, the creature strikes him hard with a powerful and swift tail swipe. Lying on the ground, Yuma refuses to accept that he has to die for a man like that. Suddenly, a mysterious voice claims it can no longer bear to watch this scene. With that, a feather of light floats down slowly from the sky, stopping in front of him. Soon, the spirit of a man in a hat appears and reveals that he is the chosen one. Not understanding the situation, the young man asks who exactly this figure is. The spirit replies that his identity doesn't matter, as the most important thing is that he has already become a player. The mysterious figure then advises him to have more fun and offers his strength to help. Outside, Totsuka realizes something is wrong inside the boss room. He notices the monster has suddenly stopped moving and that the situation has changed. Irritated, he yells at Yuma to stop mumbling and hurry up and get eaten by the boss. Yuma, however, just stares back at him in silence, showing no reaction. With a defiant look, the young man finally turns and calls his former boss by his name. The man takes a step back, surprised by the sudden change in his subordinate's attitude. Then, he extends his hand and firmly declares that he is no one's subordinate anymore. The spirit then tells him to have more fun and teaches him how to use one of his new abilities. With that, the monster advances to attack the young man who was still on the ground. Then, the little fairy snaps her fingers and activates the newly granted power. An energy hits the dungeon boss and completely envelops it. The creature then stops its attack, not understanding what just happened. Suddenly, the young man transforms into a small Glenfang and climbs onto the boss's back. The fairy then explains that, to the monster, he now looks like one of its subordinates. Soon, the creature turns towards Totsuka and points at him with its claw. The spirit then translates the order, saying the boss is telling him to take care of his former supervisor. Even with the order, the young man hesitates and tries to argue that Totsuka is his boss. The fairy interrupts him, saying that titles mean nothing, as in the end, he's just a pawn. Then, she tells him to wake up, because his real adventure begins now. With a smile, the young man agrees and affirms that he is now a player. As soon as the decision is made, he gets up from the ground with a new look in his eyes. Finally, the young man declares he will live freely and walks toward the exit of the room. Annoyed, Totsuka yells at Yuma to stop mumbling and hurry up and be devoured by the boss. With a firm gaze, Yuma declares that he is no longer Mr. Totsuka's subordinate. Enraged, the man shouts, asking if Yuma is defying him, and threatens him by reminding him that he's the one who decides his performance review. Then, the young man prepares to use the ability of his new class. He then activates the bluff skill, which can alter his target's perception. An energy blast hits Totsuka head-on, and he screams, not understanding what it is. Suddenly, the man looks ahead with an expression of pure terror. Before him, the image of the monster transforms into the figure of his feared company director. The illusion then yells at Totsuka, asking what he's doing there and where his work is. Completely terrified, he asks how long the director has been standing there. Then, Totsuka apologizes and tries to blame his subordinate to save his performance review. With a subservient smile, he approaches and comments that the director's tie is crooked. The monster then hits him with a powerful punch that sends him flying. Soon after, the creature finishes him off with a strong tail strike that smashes him against the ground. With the impact, the man's sword falls from his hand, now completely defeated. Yuma then questions his former boss, asking if he's still trying to save his own skin. Lying on the ground, Totsuka just stares at the approaching monster, completely defenseless. The creature then raises its claw, ready to deliver the final blow and finish him off. Seeing the imminent attack, the man cries out in pure fear, with nowhere to run. At the last second, Yuma steps in front and says that, despite everything, he doesn't have to die. The spirit then praises the young man's attitude, saying he showed the difference in caliber between the two. Seeing a chance to survive, Totsuka begs Yuma to help him, admitting he was wrong. With the sword in hand, the young man just tells him to get out of his sight and never show his face again. Without a second thought, the man gets up and runs out of the room as fast as he can. Alone with the monster, Yuma dodges an attack and prepares to counterattack. He then charges forward with his sword in hand, ready to face the creature on equal terms. With a war cry, the young man channels all his strength into the final blow. With a single upward slash, he hits the monster head-on and defeats it. The fairy then announces that the boss subjugation has been successfully completed. Soon, notifications appear, informing him that he has leveled up, unlocked a new skill, and completed the dungeon. As soon as the dungeon is cleared, the surrounding scenery begins to dissolve into particles of light. Suddenly, the young man finds himself back on the street, in the same spot where the office used to be. With a smile, he realizes he really managed to complete the dungeon on his own. Then, his gaze turns to the sky, surprised by something he saw. Flying between the buildings, several unknown creatures crossed the city's skyline. A news report on a large screen announced that this was an unbelievable situation for everyone. The report explained that monsters and dungeons identical to a certain game had appeared all over the world. Furthermore, a new continent and monsters that didn't exist in the the game had also been spotted. While the news anchor urged everyone to remain calm, a crowd was forming in the streets. In the midst of the chaos, people wondered what was happening and what the future of the world would be. Amid the confusion, Yuma comments that things are getting interesting with the appearance of dungeons. The spirit then appears and says that he has a much better expression now, as expected. With that, the young man thanks him for being saved and asks who he is exactly. The figure then introduces himself as Ludian and says he's just a playboy, nothing more. Upon hearing the name, the young man remembers the book and realizes that was the author's name. Ludian then says that complaining about the crisis won't change anything and encourages him to take advantage of the situation, asking what his next move will be. While thinking about his answer, the young man spots something in the distance that catches his attention. Soon, he recognizes the crystal tower that has appeared in the middle of the city as one of the dungeons from the game. With that, a smile forms on his face as he gets a new idea. He then says he just thought of something really good to do next. The young man imagines that, at that very moment, inside that dungeon, he could do something really fun in there where danger lurked. Standing before the door, the young man explains that this is a tutorial dungeon. Confused, Ludian asks why they suddenly ended up there. Yuma then reveals that inside, there's a locked room with a hidden treasure from the goddess. The spirit just listens to the explanation with a curious expression. Then he continues, saying that since the game's launch, no one has managed to open that room. With that, the young man confesses he always wanted to know what legendary item was stored there. With a smile, Yuma claims he finally figured out how to open it, and that he'll show him. Ludian then understands that the world is his playground and tells him to have fun. Next, the spirit announces he's going to take a nap and vanishes into thin air. Watching him disappear, the young man comments that he really does come and go as he pleases. Alone, the player enters the labyrinth of beginnings to start his journey. On his way, he approaches the statue of a goddess in the center of the hall. The statue then greets him and explains that the labyrinth was created to guide him on his mission. Hearing the voice, Yuma remarks that it's the exact same line from the original game. To finish, the goddess instructs him to learn how to fight and find the way to the dungeon's exit. With a gesture, the goddess says her blessings will always be with him. Observing her up close, the young man comments that seeing her in person makes her even more magnificent. With a smile, he prepares for what's next in the tutorial. As the young man walks through the hall, the goddess explains that the status screen is right in front of him. Then, she continues, saying he can see his HP and MP and must listen to the instructions carefully. When she tells him to open the chest, she notices the player has already opened it on his own. He then complains that, as expected, it was just a bronze sword, while the goddess asks him to be more grateful. Suddenly, a fire creature appears in the hallway in front of him. Seeing the monster, the goddess alerts him that an enemy has just appeared. Next, she instructs him to draw his weapon and focus for the battle. With a single strike, Yuma destroys the enemy, and the goddess laments that he didn't even try a little. Anyway, she congratulates him on defeating his first opponent and prepares to continue. The young man then ignores the sword he received and walks towards one of the hallway walls. He then bends down to pick up another sword that was leaning there. With the new weapon in hand, the player swings it hard, surprising the goddess with his attitude. With the new weapon, the young man starts striking the hallway wall repeatedly. He then leaves several bright slash marks on the wall with his attacks. Seeing this, the goddess yells at him to stop, as he must not desecrate the sacred dungeon. Yuma then realizes she's getting angry, and that if he pushes her a little more, the secret level 0 raid boss, the Dark Goddess of Wrath, will finally appear. He recalls that the Dark Goddess only manifests when the original is consumed by rage. With that, the player remembers her lines and the items she drops. The Dark Goddess then says she has finally escaped the eternal prison she was in. She then laments that the treasure chest she left behind has disappeared, revealing the crown of thorns. The young man then deduces that the eternal prison was hidden inside the tutorial dungeon all along. With a smile, he turns to the goddess and asks if she knows about that treasure chest. Flustered, she denies knowing anything and tries to get back to the tutorial's lesson on skills. Ignoring her completely, Yuma strikes the wall once more with all his might. Suddenly, the goddess's expression changes, and she breaks into a dark smile. Completely transformed, the Dark Goddess screams at the young man, telling the brat to listen to her once and for all. With a smile, the young man realizes that just as he knew, she has finally appeared. The Dark Goddess then reveals she's tired of repeating this tutorial every single day. She then yells that he shouldn't think he can get away with pissing her off so much. With a scream, the creature lunges at him at full speed. With his sword, the young man manages to block the direct hit at the last second. Even so, the force of the impact drags him back across the hall floor. The young man then realizes that's the speed of a raid boss, and that he's in deep trouble at his current level. The goddess prepares for another attack attack with her sharp claws. In the blink of an eye, she charges at him again with everything she's got. Surprised, he yells that she's too fast and he can't dodge. With that, the goddess's attack hits him head-on with several slashes at once. The blow knocks him to the ground, making him drop his sword. With a laugh, the dark goddess celebrates that this is fun and that this is how she wants to do things. She then screams that he made her repeat the tutorial millions of times, calling him a bastard. At the last second, a mysterious figure appears and says, "That was a close call." Suddenly, the young man gets up from the floor unharmed, to the goddess's surprise. With a smile, he reveals his bluff worked at the last second, showing the crown of thorns in his hand. The legendary item was now in his possession, exactly as he had planned. The goddess then realizes he took the item and wonders how he managed to do that. With a look of satisfaction, the young man prepares to finalize his plan. Next, he stretches and celebrates that it was a lot of fun. Finally, the player declares that he will now take the goddess's treasure and complete his objective. The young man then approaches the large, sealed door at the end of the hall. He then uses the crown of thorns to finally unlock the passage. With a loud bang, the door opens, revealing what was hidden inside. Celebrating, the young man shouts that he managed to open the dungeon's secret door. With a focused gaze, he braces himself to see what awaits on the other side. Soon, the treasure chest appears in the middle of the room, emitting a bright light. Facing the object, the young man identifies it as the goddess's hidden treasure and wonders what's inside. Without hesitation, he reaches out to finally open the chest and discover its contents. With that, a notification reveals he has obtained the goddess's ring of protection, which restores his HP once. Surprised, the young man shouts that he got it, and that it's truly a legendary item. He then observes the ring in his hand to see the item's details. Looking through the ring, the young man notices something strange in the room and tries to understand. In the deepest part of the dungeon, the tutorial goddess was lying on the floor. Suddenly, she slowly begins to wake up, still not understanding what happened. Sitting on the floor, the goddess looks around and asks where she is. Looking at her hands, the goddess tries to understand what just happened. Then she remembers that she completely lost herself in a fit of rage. Suddenly, the goddess turns around, noticing a strange presence in the fountain behind her. A young man then greets her from inside the water and asks if she's awake yet. Completely furious, the goddess yells, asking what he thinks he's doing. Unfazed, he replies that he always wanted to swim in that fountain and doesn't understand her question. At that, the goddess looks at the adjacent room and suddenly remembers something important. She then gets out of the fountain and walks towards the now open treasure room. To her surprise, the chest that should have been taken was still on its pedestal. Opening it, she wonders why the contents are still there since the room was opened. The young man then explains that he decided not to take the ring, thinking it was something the goddess always cherished. He then comments that the ring is a very old item, but it was so well preserved you could barely tell. The goddess just watches him in silence, not knowing what to say about the young man's gesture. The scene then shifts to an ancient temple in a sunny, flower-filled field. With a cry of admiration, she places the ring into the mouth of a statue that forges sacred treasures. The three goddesses celebrate that the dedicated protection ring is ready, and that now they all have a matching one. Then, the three of them join hands to show off their identical rings in a gesture of unity. The goddess then suggests they wear the rings and go have fun in all sorts of places. In a memory, she recalls that it was a ring she used to wear when she was more free. Back in the present, the goddess explains she sealed it away because she felt she no longer needed it. With that, she laments that she would never use it again anyway. The young man then says that she was forced to act as the tutorial guide for a long time. He then reveals that he understands her pain, as he was once a corporate drone himself. The goddess watches him in silence, surprised by the young player's revelation. With a smile, he suggests she try to have a little more fun, but she questions how she could do that there. The young man then says she could create hidden labyrinths, or even go out from time to time. He then explains it could be anything she wanted to do to change her routine. With his hand outstretched, the young man states that there's no need for her to be a prisoner. The goddess stares at him for a moment, pondering his words of encouragement. Finally, she agrees with a smile and says he's right about everything. In a gesture of gratitude, the goddess decides she will give the ring to the young player. He hesitates to accept, but she insists it's all right, and places the item in his hand. The goddess then explains that he helped her realize something important and that she wants him to have it. At the dungeon exit, the young man says goodbye and promises he'll come back to play again. The goddess then warns him to be careful of the enemies outside, and he asks why the world became like this. With a distant look, she replies that she doesn't actually know the answer. She just remembers hearing a voice, and when she realized it, she was already in the real world. The young man then asks about this mysterious voice and thanks her for the information. With a smile, he says that for now, he'll just try to have as much fun as he can. The goddess then nods and says she'll do the same from now on. A few days later, new players are astonished to see the tutorial entrance completely decorated. A handwritten sign announced that the goddess was away and provided instructions for the dungeon. The players then complain about the new tutorial and how free-spirited the goddess was. Outside, Yuma observes the scene with Ludian, satisfied with the result of his actions. Finally, the spirit comments that things went well, and the young man wonders where he should go next. With a new idea, the young man decides he'll go to the new continent mentioned in the news first. With a smile, he concludes that it seems like the most exciting place to start his journey. Ludian then encourages him to keep that spirit as the whole world awaits him. The young man then nods, ready for his next adventure. Suddenly, he feels his phone vibrate and takes it out to see what it is. Looking at the screen, the young man sees it's a call from his gaming friend, Sua. Before he can answer, a desperate voice on the other end screams for his help. Worried, Yuma asks what happened, and his friend replies that he went to a beginner's dungeon. Sua then explains that he's in trouble and will be killed if he stays there. Without hesitating, the young man starts running and says he's on his way, asking for his location. He then remembers that he's been playing with Sua for a long time and that he's an experienced player. That's why Yuma finds it strange that he would be in trouble in a beginner's dungeon. As he runs, the young man wonders what the hell could have happened to his friend. In the dungeon, Sua cries in fear, completely defenseless against the threat. As he enters the dungeon, the young man recognizes it as a place for beginners, so he finds it strange that Sua is having so much trouble, since the enemies here shouldn't be strong. Suddenly, Ludian appears and asks why he's in such a hurry, and the young man says his friend is in trouble. The spirit then wonders if people can truly remain the same when the world changes. He then defines friendship as the act of reaching out, but Yuma ignores him, focused on finding Sua. The young man just keeps running, not understanding what the spirit's words meant. Suddenly, he spots his friend in the distance and shouts to get his attention. As he gets closer, Yuma asks if he's okay, and his friend is startled by his arrival. Sua then recognizes him and says, "Thank God he's here." Yuma asks what happened. With a nervous look, he explains that's not exactly what happened, but he thought the dungeon would be easy. Yuma then asks if different enemies from the game appeared, since there's no guarantee everything is the same. Sua shakes his head and says, "It's nothing like that," clutching his own arm. Not understanding the reaction, the young man just stares at him in silence, confused by the situation. Then, Sua suggests they clear the dungeon together and head for the exit. Suddenly, he shouts Yuma's name as a monster charges from behind him. With a quick move, the young man rushes towards the monster to attack. In a flashback, he recalls how their teamwork used to be perfect. He praises the good work, and Sua replies that it was obvious after playing together for so long. With that, Yuma comments that conquering the dungeon together feels just like in the game, but his friend just agrees nervously. Suddenly, Sua turns around upon spotting something on the dungeon floor. He then points and says he found a treasure chest nearby. Without hesitation, Sua opens the chest to see what's inside. A notification then reveals that the item obtained is an enhanced longsword. Yuma gets excited and says that, depending on the enhancement, an item like that can surpass high-level equipment. Sua then agrees and says that with this, maybe he can do it. He then says the rest is just copper sand and that he doesn't need it, so Yuma decides to take it. While Sua questions the item's usefulness, the young man says he'll keep it because it's shiny and soft. Suddenly, a huge creature emerges from the shadows behind them. The monster then fully reveals itself, ready for combat. Seeing the boss, Sua just whimpers in fear, completely paralyzed. With a single strike, the young man says, "Got him," as he defeats another monster along the way. Then Sua thanks him awkwardly, leaving the young man confused by his strange attitude. With this, he realizes something is definitely wrong and wonders what happened to his friend. Upon reaching a larger door, the young man comments that it looks like the boss room. He then explains they just need to defeat the boss to get out, and Sua agrees nervously. Without hesitation, Yuma pushes the large door open to reveal what's on the other side. As soon as the door opens, a monster with crab-like claws appears in the middle of the room. The creature then lets out an intimidating roar in the direction of the two players. At the monster's appearance, Sua screams in fear, completely paralyzed. Even while trembling, he tells himself he can do this with his new weapon. With a war cry, Sua charges full force at the dungeon boss. Seeing this, Yuma tries to tell him to wait, but it's too late. The player then yells as he tries to strike the creature with his sword. The boss prepares to block the impending attack with one of its claws. With a single blow, the monster shatters Sua's sword, disarming him completely. Completely terrified, Sua screams as the monster prepares to strike him. The creature then raises its claw, ready to deliver the final blow and finish him off. Seeing this, Yuma shouts for him to watch out for the incoming attack. At the last second, the young man jumps in front and blocks the blow with his sword. With that, the monster retreats, and Yuma asks his friend if he's okay. Lying on the ground, Suwa wails that his sword was destroyed and that he's going to die. The young man then questions him about his strange behavior since the first message. In tears, Suwa shouts that he's scared and can't fight anymore. Not understanding, Yuma just stares at him in silence, surprised by his friend's confession. Suwa then explains that he thought reality would be like the game, but everything is completely different. He then complains that the monsters are huge and that even their smell is horrible. On top of that, he says the equipment is too heavy to use properly. To make matters worse, he reveals that when he gets hit, the pain is real and it truly hurts. With that, Suwa yells that he's terrified and can't fight like this anymore. Seeing his friend in a panic, Yuma realizes the situation is bad and that the enemy is still in front of them. With a new idea, the young man says, "That's it," and prepares for combat. He then throws the copper sand on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. The monster shrieks in pain from the sand in its eyes, and Yuma says he'll handle the situation. With his sword in hand, he tells Suwa to get to a safe place. Ludion then comments that he used mere materials as a distraction to save his friend. With a smile, the spirit says he likes that fun approach to fighting. The young man then tries to attack the monster with his copper sword, but the blow has no effect. He then realizes the creature's carapace is too hard for his weapon. With that, the young man understands that a copper sword can't pierce that armor. Ludion then comments that he's having more trouble than expected and asks how he's going to get out of this. Yuma then backs away and realizes he needs a new strategy against the monster's claws and carapace. Suddenly, he gets an idea and decides to use one of his skills. With a glow in his hand, the young man charges at the creature once more. Suwa then yells for him not to get any closer, as he could die if he gets near. Unfazed, Yuma just tells him to watch and activates the power of the ring on his hand. With a swift move, the young man touches the monster's claw directly to begin his plan. He then shouts that the mimicry skill has been successfully activated. With that, a new skill called mimicry is unlocked, allowing him to copy a target's techniques for 15 seconds. Yuma realizes that if a steel sword won't work against that tough shell, he'll need something else. With a smile, Yuma declares that the weapon he can use is right in front of him. Then, his hand transforms into a claw identical to the creature's. Seeing this, the monster reacts with clear surprise. Without hesitation, Yuma steps forward to attack. He strikes the creature directly in the chest with the newly copied claw. The attack hits its mark, but the impact seems to cause no real damage. Immediately after, Yuma complains that the 15-second time limit is nowhere near enough. In response, the creature lets out a roar and prepares to counterattack. At that moment, Yuma realizes he only needs to land a single blow on the monster's exposed chest. With a new plan, he positions himself once more for the decisive strike. Yuma then charges with a shout, lunging at the creature with all his might. In a swift move, he ducks down and pierces the monster's carapace from below. From a distance, Suwa watches the creature's defeat, completely shocked by what he saw. Just then, Ludion appears, commenting that he was about to offer some advice if things got dangerous. Meanwhile, the defeated creature's body begins to dissolve on the ground. In a surprised tone, Ludion asks if Yuma has already mastered that fighting style. With a smile, Yuma simply confirms that his plan worked as expected. Next, the system displays notifications that he has leveled up to 9 and unlocked the playfulness skill. The scene then shifts, showing a view of a city with large buildings in the distance. At the cave's exit, Suwa comments with relief that they thankfully made it out safely. Yuma starts to speak, but is interrupted by Suwa, who announces his decision to quit being a player. Unable to believe it, Yuma questions his friend's words. Placing a hand on his shoulder, Yuma asks why, reminding him they've always done everything together. In a brief flashback, the two appear younger, saying they'd be fine as long as they were a duo. With his gaze lowered, Suwa confesses that in the end, he's just scared. He continues, explaining that what happened earlier made it clear he can't keep fighting anymore. Not knowing what to say, Yuma just murmurs his friend's name. Still, Suwa admits it was exciting to watch him, as Yuma seemed to be having fun the whole time. Suwa explains that although the game is currently inaccessible, he plans to live his life playing other games. After Yuma says he understands the decision, Suwa asks him about his plans for the future. With great excitement, Yuma reveals he wants to go to the new continent, claiming nothing could be more thrilling. Suwa then remembers an article about the recruitment of an investigation team, sparking Yuma's interest. Already standing, Suwa warns Yuma not to dare get himself killed, saying he'd never forgive him if that happened. Yuma just gives a wide smile in response to his friend's warning. The two then seal their farewell with a fist bump, and with that, Suwa turns and walks away, waving one last time. Right after, Yuma takes out his phone to read the article Sua had mentioned. The article states that several players have already shown interest, including rising guilds. The text also mentions that government-sanctioned guilds and other groups are vying for selection. Seeing that the minimum requirement is level 15, Yuma realizes he needs to raise his level first. He also concludes that to pass the test, he'll need stronger equipment. With this in mind, Yuma thinks of a treasure vault type dungeon, where he could level up and get items. Seeing that the application deadline is in 2 days, he understands he needs to hurry. The scene opens on an imposing corporate building in the city center. Right at the entrance, a sign reveals the company's name as Takagi Corporation. Inside a large meeting room, several guild members wait in silence before their leader. The corporation's president and guild master, Shoya Takagi, announces he will reveal the 2 members with the lowest scores. At the news, all the guild members stand motionless, awaiting the announcement. Next, Takagi expels Daiki Okuyama and Kaido Yoshi from the guild and the company for their poor performance. Devastated by the decision, the 2 men wonder what they will do now. Shoya Takagi justifies their dismissal by stating their kill counts and material gathering numbers were insufficient. With a merciless gaze, he declares that those who cannot contribute are useless trash. Afterward, Takagi warns the others not to let their guard down, as there is no future for those who don't put in the effort. To be selected for the investigation team, he orders everyone to give their all in the next treasure dungeon raid. Meanwhile, one of the female players clutches a paper in her hand, thinking she's in 3rd place. Even after sacrificing sleep, she laments having only reached the 3rd position. With that, the player decides she'll have to work even harder to climb the ranks. Back at his desk, Takagi concludes that in this age of chaos, those who act first secure power. Takagi reflects that everything he does is for the sake of the ideal he wishes to achieve. Meanwhile, on his phone, Yuma reads Takagi's statement that his company will enter the dungeon raiding business to save the world. Watching a video of the interview, Yuma wonders if Takagi is already running a guild. With his goal in mind, he finally enters the treasure dungeon. Upon arriving, Yuma confirms his suspicions when he notices many other players are already there. Suddenly, a movement up ahead catches his attention. He quickly identifies the creature as a treasure hunter zombie. Yuma analyzes that it's a troublesome monster that only stops moving if its head is crushed first. In that same instant, the zombie's head is destroyed by a clean shot. Just then, a blonde female player appears, weapon in hand, after having eliminated the creature. Walking past the fallen monster, the player tells herself she still needs to defeat more enemies. However, as another zombie approaches from behind her, Yuma shouts for her to watch out. In a swift move, he rushes forward and destroys the monster with a single blow before it can attack. The player turns around, completely surprised by the unexpected help. Standing before her, Yuma asks if she's okay. The player immediately demands that he not steal her prey, explaining that this is a critical moment and she has a quota to meet. Faced with this reaction, Yuma just wonders what's going on. At that moment, the player is introduced as Nijika Natsume, a member of the Glorious Hawk Guild. Nijika Natsume asks him not to steal her kill, explaining that she's in a critical period and has a quota to meet. Confused, Yuma thinks to himself that he wasn't stealing but trying to help her. Just then, a guildmate yells for Natsume to hurry up, and she runs to catch up. Watching them, Yuma reflects that even as players, some still have quotas, and they should try to have more fun. With that, Ludian appears and asks if he isn't in a hurry too, but Yuma says he plans to sightsee in the dungeon. He then comments on how the scenery looks genuinely historical. Yuma then states that he wants to enjoy this kind of thing and will deal with the consequences if he doesn't make it in time. Hearing this, Ludian remarks that he's really become a playboy. Meanwhile, Natsume's group advances through a hallway and encounters more monsters. Seeing the enemies ahead, one of the members orders the others to hold them off, and Natsume confirms she has locked onto her target. Another member informs them that the quota is 10 enhanced weapons, and that they must hunt everything, from the weakest mobs to the bosses. Out of the corner of her eye, Natsume notices Yuma still walking casually down the corridor. Soon, Yuma is admiring a torch, commenting on the otherworldly rusty smell and the great atmosphere of the place. Suddenly, his gaze is drawn to something on the floor. He crouches down to investigate, and Ludian asks what he's doing. As he observes the spot, Yuma begins to say that this dungeon is... At that moment, one of the guild members up ahead shouts that he's found the treasure room. The players quickly start finding items like an iron hammer, a power bow, and a steel spear. With that, one of the members opens a barrel and starts to examine its contents. He then pulls out a crooked dagger, wondering what this item could be. Deeming the weapon useless, the player discards it, tossing it aside. In a swift motion, Yuma catches the dagger in midair and the system notifies him of the item acquisition. With a smile, he remarks that the dagger has an interesting shape and could be used for many things. Mockingly, the guild members say he'd be better off using his bare hands than that thing. One of them adds that good weapons are for those who get there first, and they'll be taking the boss rewards too. Holding the item, Yuma reflects that a weapon's usefulness just depends on how it's used. The scene then shows the guild members scattered around the room, fighting monsters. Next, Yuma tests the newly acquired dagger on one of the skeletons. With a smirk, he notes that the weapon's eccentric weight distribution is interesting and gets an idea. On the other side of the room, a guild member points to a passage, claiming it's the way to the boss room. As the group moves forward, they step on a pressure plate on the floor. Confused, one of the guild members looks back, feeling something strange under his feet. Suddenly, a trap is sprung, and Natsume shouts for everyone to be careful. Trapped to the floor, one of the members desperately calls for Natsume's help. Immediately, Natsume replies that there must be a release switch somewhere. With that, her gaze locks onto a spot further ahead. At the same instant, a loud thud echoes as something heavy hits the ground. A massive stone golem then rises before them like a guardian. Surprised, Natsume realizes the Guardian is protecting the dungeon boss. Without hesitation, she fires an arrow directly at the Guardian. The attack hits the target dead on, but deals no apparent damage. In disbelief, Natsume questions why her attack isn't working. Observing the golem, she understands that the Guardian specializes in defense. She concludes that she can't take it down with her weapon, and wonders what to do. Then, Natsume spots the trap's release switch positioned just behind the Guardian. Yuma then turns to Natsume and asks if he just needs to press the switch back there. With a confident smile, he says they can leave the task to him. One of the trapped members yells, questioning what an idiot like him could do with a useless weapon. Ludion then comments that kids these days don't understand anything, and Yuma agrees with him. Yuma then declares that even this weapon has its use. His playful spirit skill then transforms the crooked dagger into a lightning boomerang. The sudden transformation of the weapon leaves Natsume completely stunned. The guild member also shouts, asking what that thing is. With a grin, Yuma tells the new weapon to show them what it can do. He then throws the boomerang, which swerves around the Guardian and hits the trap switch with precision. With the switch deactivated, the stone golem crumbles instantly. The trap on the floor also disengages, freeing the trapped players. Natsume watches in disbelief, realizing he deactivated the trap and the Guardian at the same time. As the boomerang returns to his hand, Yuma reveals he already knew about the trap. He explains that he was examining the floor as he walked down the corridor. Yuma then concludes that, useless or not, you have to explore the possibilities of everything, and now only the boss remains. On the ground, the two guild members lie fallen and injured after their confrontation with the trap. As she runs to help them, Natsume asks if they're okay, but one of them just laments that they fell for a trap. With a clenched fist, the player says that if they fail the mission, they'll be kicked out of the guild. He then states that with that, they'll have no place to belong anymore. Even injured, the member declares they will meet their quota and that they'll succeed if they defeat the boss. However, as he tries to stand, he feels a sharp pain from his injuries. Seeing this, Natsume stops him, warning that he can't move with those injuries. With that, she decides she has no choice but to handle the situation herself. Natsume then tells them to leave it to her, stating she'll defeat the boss alone no matter what. Her colleague agrees, saying they're counting on her to do what pathetic people like them couldn't. With determination, she replies that she'll do it for their ideal, whatever it takes. A little further back, Yuma watches the entire interaction in silence. He soon picks up the trap from the ground and comments that, despite it being a nasty item, everyone's injuries don't seem too severe. Suddenly, Natsume turns around and questions him about what he's doing there. Without waiting for a reply, she states that they're risking their lives fighting in this place. With a firm gaze, Natsume demands he stay out of her way, as there's something she needs to accomplish. Yuma then asks if she's referring to the quota, but Natsume clarifies that the quota is just the beginning. Right after, she adds that everyone is striving to achieve the ideal that lies beyond it. Hearing the word ideals, Yuma remembers how they made him shout similar things every morning at his old company. Facing the boss's door, Natsume affirms that she can't hesitate, as Takagi entrusted her with the ideal of creating a new world. Her gaze shows the utmost determination for her mission. With that, Natsume declares that in return, she must give her all to live up to that trust. Upon hearing the name Takagi, Yuma finally realizes this is the guild he saw in the news. He then recalls his old company, where no one seemed to be having fun in the end. At that same moment, the large doors to the boss room begin to open. As soon as the two enter, the room's floor is revealed to be covered in spike traps. Amidst gears and chains, a skeletal guardian rises as the dungeon boss. The creature then flashes a menacing grin with its single glowing eye. Yuma identifies the monster as a treasure guardian that mercilessly attacks any intruder. Impatiently, Natsume replies that she already knows that and that they need to fight while dodging the traps. Without warning, a huge golden trap emerges from the floor, forcing the guardian to back away. With that, Natsume leaps back to dodge the impending impact. Right after, she gets ready and aims her bow directly at the dungeon boss. The arrow hits the guardian's shoulder, but the attack doesn't cause any significant damage. While defending against the counterattack, Natsume realizes that at this rate, she won't be able to observe it properly. She then turns to Yuma and demands that he attack the monster like he did before. Yuma explains that the room is full of traps, which prevents him from using the boomerang correctly. He then concludes that to use it under these conditions, he'll need to resort to that method, but first, he needs to create an opening. With the constant traps and multiple attack patterns, Yuma wonders if he can really pull off his plan. Losing her patience, Natsume starts to ask what he's muttering about. Suddenly, the guardian appears right behind her, ready for a new attack. The creature lands a direct hit with a powerful blow that sends her flying. Fallen on the ground, Natsume is stunned by the monster's unbelievable strength. Even facing imminent danger, she prepares to continue the fight. With a determined look, Natsume reminds herself that she's the one who needs to finish this battle. At the last second, the guardian prepares to deliver a crushing blow against Natsume. Yuma then pulls her close, saving her from the attack that hits the ground with full force. Annoyed, Natsume yells at him, asking why he's getting in her way. She continues, insisting that she needs to fight for the ideal she believes in. Moving away from the monster, Yuma holds her in his arms and tells her to leave the rest to him. He then throws a small object towards the guardian to create a distraction. As soon as the item hits the target, Yuma sees that he has successfully created an opening. He then grabs Natsume's arm, who reacts with surprise at his touch. Without wasting time, Yuma puts her on his back and starts running away from the boss. On his back, Natsume asks why he's running and demands he let her go, as she can still fight. Ludian then appears and asks if she still doesn't get it, while Yuma tells her to just watch. The scene shows the two of them running out of the boss room door. Immediately, the guardian turns and starts to follow them out of the room. Scared, Natsume yells that the monster is chasing them, but Yuma replies that's exactly what he said. He then explains that the guardian relentlessly attacks anyone seeking the treasure. With a smile, Yuma begins to explain what that means. Suddenly, a huge phantom trap emerges from the ground and bites down hard on the guardian. Faced with the unexpected scene, Natsume and the guardian react with total surprise. As the creature roars in pain, Yuma reveals that he modified the traps earlier. In a brief flashback, he's shown analyzing the trap he had picked up from the floor. With a wink, Yuma concludes his plan by saying, "It's an eye for an eye, a trap for a trap." As the ghost trap holds the guardian, it begins to groan under the pressure. Yuma then reveals that the guardian's mana is flowing directly from that eye. With that, he says that if they attack together, they can take it down, and Natsume agrees to follow his lead. In that same instant, the guardian starts charging a large amount of energy in its hands. Then, the creature fires two powerful energy beams in their direction. Seeing the imminent attack, Yuma and Natsume brace themselves to dodge the blast. As they dodge, the two end up colliding with each other midway. Ludian then scolds them for dodging the same way, while the two argue about who bumped into whom. Taking advantage of the distraction, the guardian lunges toward them for a direct attack. The monster then smashes the ground with its fist, sending a shockwave that cracks the entire hallway. Seeing an opening, Yuma shouts to Natsume that now is the time to attack. With her bow in hand, she takes aim and declares that the enemy is now hers. Soon, the two launch a combined attack with the boomerang and an energy arrow straight into the guardian's eye. As its body falls apart, the monster is finally defeated by the double attack. After the intense battle, Yuma and Natsume finally breathe a sigh of relief. Observing the scene, Ludian comments that he can't tell if they're an amazing team or a terrible one. Suddenly, Yuma levels up to 15 and celebrates finally meeting the requirements for the expedition team. In that same instant, a shining item appears where the boss was defeated. The intense glow illuminates the entire hallway where Yuma is standing. Next to Natsume, he wonders if that might be a rare item. Soon, the system announces the acquisition of the demon-piercing rapier, a weapon that ignores the defense of inorganic creatures. With the new weapon in hand, Yuma celebrates, wondering if his playboy luck has been activated. Natsume watches from the side with a surprised expression. Remembering her objective, she thinks that she also needs to check the boss room's treasure chest. With that, she runs back to the room where they faced the guardian. As soon as she arrives, Natsume opens the large wooden chest that was there. The system then announces that she has acquired a +1 morning star. Satisfied, Natsume confirms that this is her 10th enhanced weapon, and that with it, she has finally met her quota. At the dungeon exit, she thanks Yuma, saying she was able to complete her mission thanks to him. Without changing his expression, Yuma simply asks if she had fun, leaving Natsume confused. Yuma then explains that using the dungeon's traps against enemies is something you can't do in a normal game. With a serious expression, Natsume replies that she wouldn't exactly call it thrilling. Jumping back, Yuma tells her she should loosen up a bit. With a smile, he continues, stating that she should just let herself have fun. Natsume just watches him in silence, processing his words. At the dungeon exit, Yuma says goodbye to her and says he'll see her around. As she watches him leave, Natsume thinks that she has no use for something like freedom. With a clenched fist, she reminds herself that she's doing this for the sake of Mr. Takagi's ideals. Standing in the hallway, she reflects on the fact that someone who fights like that even exists. The scene then shifts to the door of the president's office at the Takagi Corporation. Sitting at his desk, Takagi confirms she has met her quota, but warns her not to get complacent. He then orders her to pass the New Continent's Expedition Team Selection exam without fail. Takagi also instructs Natsume to keep monitoring the playboy she was with, as he might be useful. With a fixed gaze, she simply replies that she understands the order. The scene ends by showing the large venue where the expedition team's selection exam will be held. In the midst of the crowd, Yuma celebrates the arrival of the selection exam, stating that even though he can't lose, this is very exciting. From a stage, an organizer announces to the elite players that the selection exam for the New Continent's expedition team will now begin. He begins his speech by reminding them that ever since the appearance of dungeons and the New Continent, humanity has been facing an unprecedented crisis. The organizer continues, questioning what secrets and what kinds of beings inhabit that mysterious place. With that, he warns of the danger and the need to make no mistakes during the first contact with the local inhabitants. Next, the man explains that 10 individuals with excellence in mind, skill, and body will be selected to form the team. The exam will consist of 3 stages: a written test, a collection test, and a simulated battle. As the first order of business, the organizer instructs everyone to form pairs, as the exam begins with choosing a fighting partner. Surprised by the sudden instruction, Yuma wonders what he means by that. The man then announces they have 5 minutes and that anyone who fails to form a pair will be disqualified. Yuma freezes for a moment as he processes the new rule. Even knowing that choosing the right partner is crucial, Yuma understands he has no time to waste and starts running. Without hesitation, he approaches a short player who reacts to the unexpected touch. With a smile, Yuma begins to invite him to form a pair. However, the short player named Kyusuke Narumi rejects him, stating that he doesn't have what it takes to be his partner. As he searches desperately, Yuma wonders who else he could ask to team up. Soon he spots a blonde-haired player who catches his eye in the middle of the crowd. As soon as he's approached, the blonde man scoffs at him, saying that some clueless nobody tried to talk to him. The man then points a recording device at Yuma's face. Next, the player, introduced as Teppei Shimada, asks his audience what a playboy is. With only 1 minute left on the clock, the pressure on Yuma mounts. He then thinks that getting disqualified would be a disaster, but he also can't just partner up with anyone. In a last-ditch effort, Yuma turns and asks someone nearby if they'd like to team up with him. To his surprise, the person he approached is Nijika Natsume, the player he met in the dungeon. Yuma quickly recognizes her, and she formally introduces herself as Nijika Natsume from Glorious Hawk, making their pair official. With a smile, Yuma says he's looking forward to working with her. Natsume, however, completely ignores him and turns the other way. Her cold reaction leaves Yuma wondering what's going on. She then reflects that she isn't here to make friends, and that she will simply observe and use him during the exam. With that, she reaffirms to herself that everything she does is for the sake of Mr. Takagi's ideals. The first stage of the selection exam begins with a written test for all players. During the test, Yuma seems to be struggling with the questions. With great effort, he tries to focus on finding the right answers. Beside him, Natsume watches with a look of clear disapproval. Soon, the organizer announces the results, stating that everyone from 21st place onward will be disqualified. With his hands clasped, Yuma nervously awaits the results. When he sees he placed 19th, he celebrates having barely passed, but still being in the competition. Upset, Natsume asks how they got 19th place, and Yuma explains there were questions in English and French. Natsume scolds him, saying it was basic knowledge, but Yuma apologizes and confesses he just picked the answers that look the most interesting. Next, the board reveals that the first place went to the duo Soma Kiria and Izuchi Shino. With the announcement, all the players turn to look at the first place duo. Natsume then recognizes them as Crimson Blade, the famous player duo whose popularity is soaring. She's surprised to think that they also managed to get first place on the written exam. With that, Natsume turns to Yuma and asks if next time he'll act like his life depends on it. With a smile, Yuma replies that he'll try to be a little more lighthearted about it. The organizer announces that the next exam location is the Cave of Forgotten Time. He then explains that it's a dungeon with a labyrinthine terrain that confuses one's sense of direction and time. With that, the mission is revealed. Retrieve 3 gems within 2 hours to pass the exam. Before they enter, the organizer gives the players one last important warning. He informs them that the limestone caves have become a den of monsters. Then, one of the players tells the others to get ready for the challenge. Right after entering, Yuma and Natsume spot one of the gems shining on a cave wall. With the item in hand, Yuma celebrates the good start, saying they only need 2 more. Natsume then suggests they hurry to find the others, but without letting their guard down against the monsters. As they walk, Yuma stops and carefully observes one of the cave walls. Touching the wall, he wonders what that strange mark could be. Yuma then deduces that if they follow the mark, which darkens as they go, they'll reach the source of the magical power. Right after, he enthusiastically points to something he found up ahead. Confused, Natsume turns and looks in the pointed direction with a surprised expression. Celebrating, Yuma points to the next gem, and Natsume praises him for having a good eye. With his weapon drawn, Yuma says that if they break the barrier with a ranged attack, it'll be a piece of cake for them. Suddenly, he realizes that the duo Soma Kiria and Izuchi Shino has appeared right behind them. With a smile, Soma asks if they found the gem first and says they'll look elsewhere. With that, the duo simply turns and leaves, leaving Yuma and Natsume behind. Natsume then comments that they're very gentlemanly, as they trust in their skills regardless of their popularity. Then, an attack shatters the barrier, causing the gem to fall to the ground. As soon as the item is freed, Natsume grabs it, and Yuma celebrates getting their second one. With only one more gem to go, Yuma states that they'll definitely finish the exam in time. In another part of the cave, the duo Kyusuke Narumi and Teppei Shimada are making their way through. Despite both being leftovers, Kyusuke complains about having to team up with a scruffy old man, as he wanted the strong and beautiful warrior. Suddenly, a weak-looking monster appears in front of Kyusuke. In the same instant, the small creature attacks him with a powerful electric shock. While Kyusuke begs for help, Teppei enthusiastically approaches and starts filming the scene. Seeing his partner won't stop, he decides he has no choice but to act. Teppei then uses a large energy shield to crush the small creature and save his companion. Noticing the situation, Yuma shouts that they need to help and runs toward the danger. With his weapon in hand, he charges into combat without hesitation. Right after, Natsume attacks a giant creature that had appeared. After the battle, a player thanks them for their help, explaining that he let his guard down and got surrounded. While Natsume says it's a good thing, Yuma asks him where his partner is. At that moment, Kyusuke Narumi appears from behind a rock, watching the scene. With a focused gaze, he decides this is the right moment to act. In a swift move, he uses a skill to steal the 2 gems they had collected. With the items in hand, Kyusuke celebrates that everything went according to plan, leaving Yuma stunned. Furious, Natsume demands he return what he stole and starts yelling. Suddenly, Teppei Shimada appears and punches the ground, creating a shockwave. From the tremor, the ground beneath their feet gives way, causing the 2 of them to fall into a pit. From above, Kyusuke praises his partner for the good move. Shimada then reveals they fell right into their trap, while Kyusuke adds that they were just waiting for some naive prey. With all 3 gems in hand, Kyusuke announces that they will now finish the exam in first place. Still in disbelief, Natsume laments that they used a stealing skill on them. With this, Yuma realizes that at this rate, they're going to fail the exam. Yuma helps Natsume climb out of the hole they fell into. After Natsume thanks him, Yuma rushes her, saying they're out of time and need to go after the other pair. As Yuma starts to run, he's suddenly forced to stop. Confused, he turns to see what interrupted him. Natsume grabs him and yells for him to stop immediately. She then stares at him intently, without saying a single word. Further ahead, they spot Kyusuke on the ground, yelling in their direction. He begs for help, explaining that crystal monsters suddenly appeared. Then, an imposing crystal golem emerges, revealing the final gem on its chest. Suspicious, Natsume asks if this is another trick so he can steal something else from them. Desperate, Kyusuke denies it and insists he's telling the truth, even though he knows he can't blame them for doubting him. The scene shows the pair who previously tricked them in deep trouble. With a desperate look on his face, Kyusuke continues to plead for help. His begging eyes are fixed directly on Yuma and Natsume. Faced with the scene, Yuma says he wants to try and trust him, because if it's true, the boy could actually be killed. With his weapon in hand, Yuma declares that in that case, he'd rather be tricked. Seeing his decision, Natsume just sighs disapprovingly. She then turns to Kyusuke and warns warns him that he'd better return the gem if they save him. Kyusuke wonders why Yuma would even try to trust him after being tricked. As he watches Yuma's smile, he wonders if the guy is actually enjoying this situation. With a mix of surprise and admiration, Kyusuke thinks about how unbelievably cool Yuma is. Yuma throws his boomerang, but the attack has no effect on the crystal golem. With his unconscious partner in his arms, Kyusuke warns them to be careful, as even his brother's attacks didn't work. With a snap of his fingers, Yuma says he understands the problem. He then prepares for battle with his new demon-piercing rapier. The system then displays the weapon's description, explaining that it ignores defense and deals triple damage to inorganic creatures. Seeing the plan, Natsumi readies her bow and says she'll draw the monster's attention. The golem then fires a series of energy beams in her direction. However, Yuma appears and blocks the attacks just before they hit her. With the distraction created, he charges forward and pierces the golem's core directly with his new weapon. The direct hit causes the golem's body to crack and glow intensely. Seeing that the attack worked, Yuma prepares to face the remaining crystal monsters. In an agile move, he destroys one of the smaller creatures charging at him. However, another monster suddenly appears in his blind spot, catching him by surprise. The creature then readies itself to land a direct blow to his face. Unexpectedly, Kyusuke appears from behind and holds the monster back before it can attack. With a mischievous grin, he firmly stops the creature's advance. Yuma praises him for his help, calling him Mr. Thief. Seizing the opportunity, he positions himself behind one of the larger crystal golems. His gaze remains focused, waiting for the right moment to make his next move. Meanwhile, Teppei Shimada shatters one of the purple crystal monsters with a single punch. With a smile, he comments that he was just caught off guard earlier. Kyusuke then thanks them for the help he received. Yuma then rushes forward and attacks the last remaining smaller crystal monster. The blow shatters the creature completely, ending the first part of the battle. With an outstretched hand, Yuma says it's all over now and they can relax. Emotional and crying, Kyusuke calls him Brother Playboy. He then apologizes for tricking them before and promises to follow him for the rest of his life. Annoyed, Natsume scolds him, saying he just says whatever suits him and that she still hasn't forgiven him. Suddenly, her gaze is drawn to a purple gem on the ground. As she picks it up, Natsume wonders if it's also one of the exam gems. Yuma deduces that since there were 3 monsters, the other 2 must also have gems as their power source. With the 3 gems in hand, they celebrate their success and decide to head back before time runs out. Back at the starting point, the group gathers with the other players in front of the organizer. The organizer announces that the 12 pairs who brought back all 3 gems have passed to the simulated battle phase. The players celebrate passing as they prepare for the final exam. A short distance away, one player asks another what happened to the girl who's crying. He explains that her partner was killed by a monster while they were separated. Beside her, another female player comforts her, saying he fought bravely. The duo Soma and Izuchi then lament that they were too late to save him. With a serious expression, Soma tells the girl it's not her fault. Meanwhile, an image of his blood-stained hand appears as he thinks that he is truly... The scene cuts to a quick memory of her partner, fallen and defeated in battle. With a sinister smile, Soma completes his thought, saying he's very sorry about what happened. The final exam takes place in a large arena with gates and Eastern-style architecture. From his platform, the organizer prepares to announce the last stage of the selection. With a firm voice, he declares that they will now begin the final exam. He explains that they will enter the dungeons of the 4 beast generals and attempt to subdue the bosses. A map then illustrates the 4 boss dungeons, which connect to a central hall. After the subjugation, the 5 teams with the highest contribution score will pass. Natsume is shocked to realize that the 4 beast generals are level 300 enemies. Beside her, Yuma watches the duo Soma and Izuchi with a suspicious gaze. He then notices recent bloodstains on Soma's weapon, remembering that the cave monsters didn't bleed. With this, Yuma begins to suspect that maybe those 2 were involved in the other player's death. The players are then taken to the central hall of the 4 beast generals dungeon. In front of one of the doors, Soma announces they will face the fire room and invites anyone who wants to join them. Faced with the invitation, the other players look at each other with hesitation and fear. One of them comments that, even with help, their levels are too low, and they should focus on weaker enemies. Natsume agrees with the strategy and says they should also start by leveling up. Suddenly, Yuma raises his hand and offers to join them. Surprised by his decision, Natsume questions him, but he approaches and says they will go together. With a serious look, Yuma states that he's also curious about their methods. Soma then agrees to the partnership and says they're counting on him. Upon entering the room, they come face to face with the Fire Beast General, Forza. Soma comments that the monster looks strong, but it won't be a match for them. With that, Izuchi charges forward and unleashes a powerful blow with her hammer. Even though the creature dodged, she realizes her secondary plan was activated. The hammer then releases an electric charge that paralyzes the fire beast. With the trap's success, Izuchi declares that everything went according to plan. Soma congratulates her on the move and tells her to leave the rest to him. He then uses his burning blade ability and delivers a massive blow that defeats the monster. After the battle, Soma turns and comments that it was an easy victory. Observing the scene, Yuma reflects that even in victory, they don't seem to be having fun. Natsumi then praises them for their incredible teamwork, saying there was no room for them to help. With a fixed gaze, Soma prepares for the next phase of his plan. Suddenly, Yuma's expression changes, and he turns sharply. Behind him, Natsumi watches the scene with a surprised expression. Without hesitation, Yuma blocks an attack from Soma, who was about to strike him from behind. Next, Izuchi also positions herself to attack Natsume. With a smile, Soma asks if he's finally realized their true intentions. Yuma then confirms his suspicions and accuses them of being player killers. The revelation leaves Natsume completely shocked by what she just heard. With an excited smile, Izuchi says the main event has finally arrived. With his rapier in hand, Yuma accuses them of being responsible for the victims of the previous exam. Soma then questions him back, asking, "What's the fun in defeating monsters?" With a sadistic smile, he explains that with people, they can see their terrified expressions. Izuchi adds that she gets chills just thinking about the kind of faces they'll make. With an outstretched hand, Soma reminds them that if they go to the new continent, they will live side by side with danger. With a menacing look, he concludes that the world has become this way, and they should let them play as they please. As Ludian tries to speak, Yuma cuts him off, telling those bastards not to mess with him. Facing Soma, he continues, accusing them of stealing people's futures and acting so carelessly. His voice filled with anger, Yuma yells that this isn't what playing means. He then explains that playing should be about expanding people's possibilities. Ludian then adds, stating that it's about expanding the future. With a proud look, Ludian begins to call Yuma's name. At the same moment, Yuma's hand glows intensely as he prepares a new skill. He then charges forward and uses his hand to directly block Soma's sword in a clash of energy. Surprised by the action, Soma reacts with a curious sound. With a focused gaze, Yuma activates his mimicry skill to copy his opponent's weapon. Soon, a copy of Soma's sword appears in his hand, and the two face off in a clash of blades. With a smile, Soma comments that it's a skill he's never seen before. He then warns him that even with the copied equipment, their stats are different. With his opponent's superior strength, Yuma is pushed back under the pressure of the blow. At the same moment, Izuchi appears from behind, preparing a surprise attack against him. As the blade approaches, Yuma turns with a panicked expression. With a sadistic smile, Soma celebrates that this is the face he so desperately wanted to see. Suddenly, the sound of a scream draws Yuma's attention to the side. On the ground, Natsume is pinned down by Izuchi, who holds her weapon to her neck. With a cruel smile, Izuchi asks if it hurts and calls her a poor little thing. Then a voice declares that now they will all die. Soma then turns to Yuma and with a smile asks him what he'll do next. Cornered, Yuma faces his opponent with an expression of fury and determination. On the ground, Yuma warns his partner that things are looking bad. From his hiding spot, Teppei Shimada realizes their plan to steal the final blow has failed. They defeated the boss instantly. Then Teppei realizes that these opponents are more than just strong. They're killers who murder for sport. Kyusuke Narumi states they can't help, as they are too strong and would surely kill them too. The two quickly agree. Their only option is to get out of there as fast as they can. While running, Kyusuke Narumi apologizes to the group and promises he'll at least visit their graves later. Even so, Yuma gathers the strength to say something while he still can. He then orders them to stop immediately, threatening to tell the examiners what they did so they'll be punished. Soma Kiria cracks a smile and starts to say that even if they manage to survive this, it will be the word of two nobodies against the beloved duo everyone adores. Then, Soma asks who the world would believe. Teppei Shimada reacts to what he just heard. He then focuses on the knight and recognizes him. With that, Teppei remembers a specific day in a fighting ring. In the memory, his opponent hits him and declares that he won the fight fair and square. He remembers how his opponent, a popular fighter, claimed he had been fouled, stating it was a complete lie. With that, he recalls that no one believed his word and, due to the negative backlash, he was forced to retire. So Teppei decided he would do anything to stand out, and that's when he started live streaming. He reveals that becoming a player is just a means to create content, and even the new continent is just for generating views. Even though he thought he could just act to get by, he feels something is different this time. In the end, Teppei admits to himself that people like them still make his blood boil. Not understanding, Kyusuke Narumi asks his partner what's gotten into him all of a sudden. Meanwhile, Soma Kiria steps on Yuma, who is already on the ground. With his foot on him, Soma warns that he will cut him very slowly and forbids him from passing out. Then he grabs him and demands that Yuma scream for him. A voice interrupts him just as Yuma realizes this is the true, terrifying face of his opponent. Soma then turns his head toward the sound. Then, Teppei Shimada points his camera and states that these are the true faces of the famous duo, Crimson Blade. His face twisted with rage, Soma Kiria demands to know why they're there. Kyusuke Narumi nervously explains that they figured something might happen, so they entered the area discreetly. Kyusuke Narumi trembles as he braces for what's next. With that, Teppei Shimada warns that this is payback for what happened before, while Kyusuke confirms they'll provide cover. Hearing that, Yuma looks toward them, realizing the unexpected help. Soma Kiria complains they've ruined the best part and threatens to kill them, but Izuchi Shino takes responsibility for handling the situation. Next, Izuchi Shino charges toward them, calling them maggots. She attacks with her hammer, but Teppei Shimada manages to block the blow using his shield ability. While defending, Teppei yells that he was eager to see how he'd fare against someone like her. Izuchi then challenges him to withstand her hammer of judgment as she presses the attack. Still on the ground, Nijika Natsumi thanks the two for their help. Soon she sees an opportunity and prepares to shoot her bow. She reveals that a charged shot from her bow is stronger than firearms and asks them to buy her some time. Kyusuke Narumi immediately says he understands and tells her to leave it to them. He then throws an item toward their opponents. The object explodes into a rogue smoke that envelops Soma Kiria and Yuma in the middle of the hall. Inside the smoke, Yuma prepares a skill and states that this helps a lot. As the battle intensifies, Izuchi Shino screams as she charges against her opponent's shields. With her bow drawn, Nijika Natsume announces that the arrow is charged and everything depends on this shot. Right after, she fires her explosive arrow with full force toward the enemy. The attack hits Soma Kiria head-on, who screams in pain from the impact of the energy. With the force of the explosion, his body is thrown backward, raising a cloud of dust. While trying to recover, Soma claims that something like that won't be enough to stop him. However, upon being hit by a new attack, he is surprised to notice that Yuma's sword is different. Seizing the moment, Kyusuke Narumi declares that their opponent's guard is wide open. With a quick move, he steals Soma's weapon and throws it while yelling for his partner to catch it. Catching the sword, Yuma declares that Soma's little reign ends here. Next, he activates the mischievous spirit contained within the blade. With that, the weapon transforms into its true form, the evil exorciser. Yuma then reflects that maybe the sword was always meant to look like this to be used correctly. Then he takes a firm step toward his adversary. Completely terrified, Soma Kiria screams for him to stay away and not come any closer. With the sword in hand, Yuma advances and strikes Soma Kiria directly in the chest. He then states that what his opponent did is unforgivable. Yuma then steps on the fallen knight's chest. As his group moves away, he warns that Soma will pay for all of this. In another location, all the players await the exam results in a large cave. After that, the four of them work together and manage to defeat another boss. An announcer then declares that the selection exam is complete and congratulates the 10 chosen for the new continent. Seeing their names on the list, Yuma and Kyusuke Narumi celebrate together that they made it through. Nijika Natsume congratulates Yuma, who once again celebrates the group's achievement. For a moment, she just stares at her own hand in silence. Then, Nijika and Yuma high-five to celebrate the victory. Sometime later, she appears in a room before Shoya Takagi's desk. Looking at the results, Shoya Takagi notes that Yuma passed and plans to make him serve his guild as he wishes. With that, he offers her an item to be used on the new continent as soon as she finds an opportunity. The object is revealed to be the Eye of Mithra, a doll that controls anyone who looks into its eyes for 10 seconds. Upon seeing the item, Nijika Natsumi realizes it's a mind control tool. With that, Shoya Takagi pressures her, stating that she can complete the mission for the sake of their just ideal. After a moment of silence, Nijika Natsume clenches her fist and replies that she understands the order. The group arrives at a large building where a trading event for players is taking place. Inside, the place is bustling with people buying and selling gear. Yuma comments that he can't believe how many people have gathered in a trading hub. Soon after, Nijika Natsume states they need to organize their weapons and items before heading to the new continent. Yuma then advises her to be careful, as scams like fake item swaps were common in the game. His warning, however, comes too late. Holding a torn item, Nijika Natsumi laments that he should have warned her sooner and asks if he's kidding. She then explains that someone offered to sell her an attractive piece of gear and seemed like a nice person. In the memory, a vendor presents the Gale cloak, claiming it was a high-quality item for a bargain. With that, the vendor offers the item for 70,000 yen. Nijika Natsume recalls thinking the price was low for an item in good condition with an agility effect. Decisively, she shouts that she'll buy the item, and the vendor thanks her for her business. The vendor then informs her the item has been sent to her inventory, and she celebrates the purchase. However, Upon checking, she discovers she only received a tattered, worthless cloak. Confused, Nijika tries to call out to the vendor to say the wrong item was delivered, but realizes he has already vanished. As Nijika stares at the now empty counter, she can't believe what happened. Yuma then realizes the vendor must have swapped the item while she was distracted getting the money. She keeps looking at the fake item she received in exchange for her money. As Nijika laments that she can't buy anything else, Yuma states they just need to get the scammer back. Confused, she asks him how he plans to do that. With a smile, Yuma declares he can't let the vendor underestimate a jester. He then turns to his team and tells them to just watch. A short distance away, the vendor returns to his post and continues his business. Soon, Yuma approaches the man and gets his attention. "Excuse me." He then asks if he can trade too, as he saw the vendor displaying several items earlier. Excited by the proposal, the vendor laughs and readily agrees to make a deal. Yuma explains that he's short on cash but would like to try trading the only item he has. Upon seeing what's offered, the vendor's eyes widen in complete surprise. The revealed item is an ancient, mystical golden sword. Then, Yuma asks what he thinks, adding that he imagines it's a difficult trade. Believing he's found the biggest fool, the vendor says he can offer a few items in return. With that, he shows 3 of his products and asks if trading for them seems fair. Feigning surprise, Yuma asks if he's sure he can part with so many items. Then, Yuma points to the Gale Cloak and agrees to trade for the 3 selected items. The other chosen items are a Thunderhorn flute and a Spirit Stone. As the vendor confirms the deal and takes the sword, Yuma celebrates getting so many good items. The vendor scoffs internally, thinking the boy is an idiot for trading something 100 times more valuable. Just as he shouts that he's found a treasure, the item in his hands begins to glow. Soon, the sword transforms into a simple, tattered cloak in his arms. The vendor reacts in shock, realizing he was tricked by a skill that alters an opponent's perception. Looking up, he sees Yuma and Ludian, understanding it was all just a grand illusion. With a smile, Yuma taunts him, asking if the deal was good for him. Right after, Nijika Natsumi appears, and the vendor recognizes her as she points to the valuable item he's holding. Yuma then explains that arrogant people who trick others always leave an opening. Sitting on the floor, the vendor laments being tricked, and wonders what kind of skill that was. Looking at the information screen, the vendor is stunned and asks if Yuma's class is really Trickster. Surprised, Yuma wonders how that man could know his class and who he really is. The vendor then finally understands how he was tricked, recognizing it as the legendary secret class. He then recalls that plans to implement the class in the game were cancelled, and it should have been discarded. Next, the man reveals he was involved in the game's production, albeit as a simple tester. He explains that the beta version of the game had several discarded elements, like legendary classes and even the new continent. Confused, Yuma asks him about the discarded continent, and the vendor suggests he might find something out if he goes there. The man then stands up and comments that a legendary class like his is suited for a place like that. He then apologizes for what happened and returns the money to Nijika, telling them to consider the items a gift. Waving goodbye, the vendor wishes them a safe journey. Thanking him, Yuma says he's going to have more fun than ever on this new adventure. And so, the day of departure by ship to the new continent finally arrives. The place is an unknown land that captivates the human heart, where the world is in chaos. Even so, some of those who awakened as players couldn't help but strongly desire that place. Yuma then declares that no matter what dangers await, he wants to see the new world with his own eyes. In his office, Shoya Takagi states that the new continent will surely have untouched resources and lands. Yuma, on the other hand, imagines the cultures, foods, and people he might find there. With this, Shoya declares it's the perfect opportunity to bring everything of value under his control. As Yuma extends a hand toward the horizon, he promises himself he will enjoy the journey. At the same time, Shoya Takagi clenches his fist and decides they will dominate the new world. So, Yuma sets off to enjoy it to the fullest, while Shoya plans to dominate and exploit everything. Aboard the ship, Yuma asks Ludian if they are getting close to the new continent. Nijika Natsumi approaches and comments that while it feels like they've been fighting for a long time, she now feels like they're setting off on an adventure. With the doll in her hands, she decides she'll hand it over once they reach the new continent. Suddenly, a noise in the hallway alerts Yuma and Ludian. Soon, a crew member runs towards them in a panic, warning them that they're in trouble. He then desperately shouts that a monster has appeared on deck. Before he can escape, the man is caught by the creature's tail, as Yuma shouts out to him. With no time to react, Yuma watches the scene unfold before his eyes. Then, a giant sea serpent emerges from the ocean, coiling around the entire ship. On deck, one of the players identifies the creature as an abyss serpent. Surprised to find it in a place like this, the monster then dives back into the churning water and disappears from sight. With that, the ship is left completely alone in the middle of the dark, silent sea. Inside the vessel, Nijika Natsume explains to the other terrified passengers that a giant monster has emerged from the sea. The duo who placed first in the exam decides it's time for the magic users to act and volunteers for the fight. As they prepare, a pair of red eyes glows in the darkness. Suddenly, the serpent's head smashes through the ship's wall and snatches the two mages in its jaws. They scream in pain as the creature's attack causes a massive explosion in the structure. After the impact, the now damaged ship drifts aimlessly on the ocean. Outside, one of the players wonders how something that big can be so fast. Worried, Yuma wonders where his companions are and where the creature will strike from next. Ordering everyone to cover all directions, the players spread out across the deck, preparing for the next attack. Soon, the serpent emerges again right in front of Yuma, who screams in shock. Without hesitation, he leaps forward to attack the monster directly. The blow lands on the serpent's face, and it shrieks in pain from the impact. After the attack, Yuma notes that the creature has fled again and that they are at a disadvantage in a battle at sea. Suddenly, he notices a new movement coming from under the water. The ship then begins to be violently shaken by an attack from the depths. Teppei Shimada and Kyusuke Narumi run to Yuma, asking what all the noise and shaking is about. Yuma yells that a giant monster is attacking from below, and that at this rate, the ship will be destroyed. Desperate, Kyusuke begs them to do something, as he can't swim. The vessel then suffers another strong impact from below. As rain begins to fall, one of the players warns that the hull won't hold much longer, and calls the monster a coward. Hearing this, Teppei Shimada yells for the creature to show itself, but Kyusuke scolds him. Upon hearing that, Yuma gets an idea. He realizes they can use sound to lure the monster out. He then remembers the thunderhorn flute he got in the trade. Wasting no time, Yuma brings the instrument to his lips. He then blows into the flute, which emits a powerful, energy-charged sound wave. The energy spreads through the water, directly hitting the hidden creature. With his sword in hand, Yuma declares that the monster will hate the sound and will surely reveal itself. With the plan in motion, Yuma orders everyone to attack at once as soon as the monster appears. From the depths, a pair of red eyes opens in the darkness. The serpent then emerges from the water and lunges toward the group. At that exact moment, Yuma yells for everyone to attack now. The players launch a combined assault that hits the creature head-on. The serpent roars in pain as it's bombarded by the simultaneous blows. After the assault, the giant monster's body falls defeated onto the ship's deck. Relieved, the group celebrates their victory, cheering that they've made it and are safe. With the monster's defeat, Yuma receives a notification that he has leveled up and unlocked a new skill. As he wonders about the new technique's effect, he notices something strange. Suddenly, all the players are pulled down through the deck, screaming as they freefall. Now underwater, Yuma sees Nijika Natsume sinking and shouts her name. He then starts to fight to stay awake as his consciousness fades. Just before passing out, a hand appears and grabs his in the deep ocean. Then, a pen-like object floats slowly in the dark water. On an unknown beach, the night deepens under the moonlight. Slowly, one of the survivors begins to regain consciousness. With his head throbbing, Yuma sits up and asks where he is. He then sees Nijika Natsume unconscious beside him and yells her name. While Teppei Shimada tries to wake her, Kyusuke Narumi coughs up water. Once they are all gathered, Teppei asks if they were the only ones who survived the tragedy. This reminds Yuma of the first mission, to investigate the local area and interact with the residents. The order was clear that no matter what happened, the investigation team had to continue. He then concludes that they have no choice but to press on with the remaining members as the real challenge starts now. Yuma then senses someone's presence and asks if they are all right. Holding a lantern, an older man approaches and asks if they need any help. The man then leads them to a local tavern, a warm and welcoming place. After hearing their story, he comments that it's terrible, but that he would love to hear all about the other continent. As they eat, one of the group members remarks that, despite everything, they're glad they came. Yuma then observes the place, thinking he never imagined he'd get to visit the game's izakaya. While eating, the players praise the food, commenting that it tastes delicious and is unlike anything they've ever had before. The host explains that the dish is roasted bird with ghost mushrooms and offers to show them the town the next day. Yuma gets excited about the idea, and the man confirms the invitation, telling them to look forward to it. A short while later, Nijika Natsume remarks that she's feeling sleepy and wonders if it's because of the drink. Yuma agrees, chalking up their exhaustion to everything they've been through that day. Then, all the group members fall asleep at the tavern table. The man then reveals that they ate everything without knowing about the sleeping effect of the ghost mushrooms. Beside him, a hooded figure clenches their fist, ready for action. With a sinister smile, the group's leader announces that they will begin the ritual. He then orders them to take the sleeping players to the flaming altar. Under the light of a red moon, the group finds themselves tied up in an unknown location, in front of a massive monster statue. Upon waking, Yuma wonders where they are and how they got to this place. He then looks up and questions the imposing monster statue before him. The stone figure had a menacing expression, its fangs bared. Yuma then yells for everyone to wake up, as the others panic upon realizing they're tied up. From this, he deduces they didn't just fall asleep, there was something in the food to knock them out. The cult leader then approaches and confirms that Yuma's suspicion is exactly right. With a smile, the man from the sacred cult of Domarg adds that they ate everything without the slightest suspicion. He then reveals that the ghost mushroom is a poisonous type that's guaranteed to make a person fall asleep. Nijika Natsumi confronts him for planning to capture them from the start and asks what they intend to do. The leader just glances to the side and states that the Exalted One is hungry. With that, he announces that the people from another world will become sacrifices for Lord Domarg. Unable to believe it, Yuma asks if they really worship a monster. The man then strikes him and shouts that by obeying Lord Domarg, the city is protected, making this a noble sacrifice. After the blow, Yuma understands they are debasing themselves before the creature in exchange for their city's protection. While struggling, Kyusuke Narumi begs to be released, arguing he's too small to be a good main course. Nijika Natsume questions the point of all this, but one of the men yells that there's no other way to save the city. The situation reminds Yuma of when he was forced to accept an excessive workload as a sacrifice for others. In the memory, a voice said that if he just endured it, everything would be fine. Then, Tatsuka would state that it was for everyone's good, and ask if he understood. With little choice, Yuma just agreed to the imposed situation. Back in the present, he remains silent for a moment, reflecting on the memory. With that, the leader warns that there's no escape and orders Alan to begin preparations for the ritual. Even so, the man named Alan seems to question if this is really the right thing to do. He then opens a locket he's holding, revealing a woman's photo. His hesitation catches Yuma's attention, who watches the scene closely. He then comments to Nijika that the man seems to have his own reasons, while thinking he might be able to use a skill even while tied up. As the players are hung over a large cauldron, the leader announces that the sacrificial ritual will begin. He then praises the great Lord Domarg and orders the ritual to purify the sacrifices to commence. With that, all the cult followers begin to chant Lord Domarg's name in unison. The cult leader announces they will be reborn as a dish presented to Lord Domarg. Even while hanging, Teppei Shimada asks that if he's going to be cooked, it should at least be a stylish dish. Amidst the followers, Alan remains silent, observing the scene. Yuma focuses his attention on that specific man among the cultists. He then decides it's all or nothing, and prepares to use one of his skills. Still with his hands tied, Yuma activates his bluff to alter his opponent's perception. The skill immediately hits Alan, who reacts in complete shock to what he sees. In his vision, he sees the woman named Namiya hanging in the sacrifice's place. The image of Namiya then questions him about the reason for his actions. Desperate, Alan screams for her forgiveness, admitting he was completely wrong. He then turns to the others and yells for everyone to stop it immediately. Now safely on the ground, Yuma asks Alan what happened to Namiya. With that, Alan begins to explain that he and Namiya were part of the guard that protected the city. He says that one day, that creature invaded the city and they couldn't win the battle. So a deal was proposed to offer sacrifices in exchange for peace. He continues the story, saying the city chose to obey, and with Domarg eliminating the other monsters, peace returned. With that, Alan remembers a specific day when everything changed. On that day, he was informed that Namiya had been chosen as the next sacrifice. Despite his desperation, Namiya said that if it meant the city and he could survive, she would gladly become the sacrifice. She then comforted him, stating it was a meaningful sacrifice, as many people would be saved. With that, Alan laments that he couldn't stop her, but he could never forget what happened. The image of Namiya being caught in the monster's claws wouldn't leave his head. He remembers perfectly the expression on her face before being devoured by Domarg. After that event, Alan reveals he stopped caring about anything and took on the role of kidnapping sacrifices. With that, he ends the story, saying he said too much about his pathetic past. After hearing everything, Yuma understands the situation and extends a hand to Alan. He then declares that, in that case, they just need to defeat Domarg. In disbelief, Alan yells that there's no way to beat him, and that if they fail, it will be a complete disaster. With that, Teppei Shimada approaches and states that they'll do it, because if they fail, only sacrifices from another world will be eaten. Then, Nijika Natsumi also speaks up, asking if he agrees with the plan. The man in white asks Yuma why he would risk himself for a city he doesn't even know. Yuma then replies that it's simply because the man doesn't seem to be having any fun. Confused, the man repeats the word fun, as if he doesn't understand its meaning. With that, a memory of a happy moment beside a woman surfaces in his mind. He recalls the radiant smile she used to have. The man then reflects that he had never even thought about that before. He then shakes Yuma's hand and states that he understands, promising to do what he can to help. He then turns to his followers and explains that if they succeed, they will no longer have to look at that thing's face. He continues his speech, introducing a caveat for the group. Still, he reinforces that this is for the sake of a new city and asks everyone to leave the task to them. One of the followers then agrees with the plan and makes himself available for whatever is needed. With that, the mission, Exterminate Domarg, worshipped by the cult, is officially accepted. The man in white then comments that Domarg is a monster that didn't exist in the original game. Yuma, in turn, smiles and says that's exactly what makes defeating him so worthwhile. In the distance, the city they need to save is seen in flames under the night sky. Suddenly, a creature's paws slam into the ground. Then, the imposing figure of Domarg is fully revealed before them. As the group walks through the forest at night, one of them asks if their destination is just ahead. The man in white confirms, explaining that the monster's hunting grounds are in the middle of the mountain overlooking the city. He then adds that the creature is obsessed with devouring humans, even though monsters could originally survive without eating them. Confused, the woman in red asks what the reason for such behavior would be. The man in white then reveals the creature simply acquired a taste for human flesh. Hearing the story's details, Kyusuke Narumi cringes in fear. The man continues, explaining that despite its size, the creature's movements are swift, and it easily tears humans apart with its claws and fangs. He recounts how the city guard was no match for Domarg, even though it was composed of warriors who had protected the place for years. The story reveals that out of the 30 guards who faced the creature, only 4 survived. Then, he corrects himself, stating that actually, only 4 were allowed to survive. In a flashback to the massacre, Domarg declares that the taste was delicious, but he wants more. The creature then orders the survivors to prepare tastier prey, promising to spare their lives in return. Back in the present, the group approaches the confrontation site. As they reach a stained rock, Yuma observes the scene and begins to speak. One of the older men then warns that dawn is near and Domarg is coming. The older man asks Yuma if he can really defeat the creature, to which he confirms. Right after, Yuma declares they will sink Domarg in a sea of explosive flames. With a mocking laugh, Kyusuke Narumi gets the group's attention. He then reveals a grenade he saved for such an occasion. The older man doubts a single shot will be enough, but Yuma explains he will use an ability to multiply the bomb into a massive number. With that, Teppei Shimada volunteers to use his strong arm to throw them and hit the monster consecutively. The plan is that no matter how large or fast Domarg is, it won't withstand the power of continuous explosions. Even so, the older man still ponders the strategy. Yuma then adds that for the plan to work, they just need to create a momentary opening in Domarg's defenses. Suddenly, a determined voice offers herself for the task. Thus, Nijika Natsume volunteers to act as a sacrifice and catch the creature off guard. Yuma immediately questions the danger of that tactic, even knowing it would create the necessary opening. Nijika reassures him, saying she'll be fine, as she possesses the Gale Cloak, which increases her agility. Besides, she states that it irritates her to always be the one who needs saving. Yuma then understands her determination and declares with conviction that they will defeat it no matter what. The man in white says his goodbyes, telling them, "We're counting on you." Then, the 2 followers leave the sacrifice on the rock and move away. Meanwhile, Yuma and the others watch everything from a nearby hiding spot. Just then, Domarg appears, landing forcefully before the offering. The creature then roars to the sky, declaring it's hungry. The older man announces that this time's sacrifice is special and asks the monster to enjoy it. Domarg quickly replies that he was waiting for this moment, drawn by the scent of a young woman. The man in white then declares that they will put an end to this, hoping the plan works. With that, the creature leans in to devour the sacrifice. Suddenly, Nijika Natsume leaps out from under the cloak that served as a decoy. With that, she calls it a freak and fires an arrow directly at it. The projectile hits the creature's head squarely, creating a strong impact. Even so, Domarg manages to catch the arrow with its teeth before it can pierce him. The creature then questions what's wrong with the sacrifice and what the meaning of this is. Nijika confronts it, yelling that as a monster it won't escape at this short distance. Yuma then activates his mimicry skill to begin the attack. With that, Teppei Shimada moves forward and takes charge of throwing the bombs. Soon, the explosives are launched toward the monster. Teppei then yells that this was just the beginning. Next, he orders the creature to swallow all the bombs. Thus, the monster roars in pain as it's hit by a series of explosions. With that, a final massive explosion completely engulfs the creature. As the smoke clears, Teppei celebrates their victory alongside Yuma and Kyusuke. However, amidst the smoke, the creature begins to regenerate. Soon, Domarg re-emerges, fully recovered, and questions what they did to it. Kyosuke Narumi then screams in shock that the creature is still alive and has regenerated. Yuma laments that not even that massive attack was able to defeat it. The two men in white watch the scene in despair, believing all is lost. Domarg then roars at them, questioning if they understand the consequences of their actions for the city. At this, the older man is terrified as he realizes his own life is also in danger. Desperate, the older man grabs Nijika Natsume and begs for forgiveness, blaming the immigrants for having acted on their own. He then offers her life in exchange for his forgiveness, while the girl struggles and tells him to let her go. Teppei Shimada watches the scene in shock, unable to believe the man betrayed them out of pure fear. Domarg then warns there won't be a next time, but he'll make an exception because this sacrifice is a high-quality one. With that, the creature approaches her and announces it will first rip out her guts and leave the brain for last. Then, the monster's hand advances slowly toward her face. Next, it opens its mouth to finally devour her. Kyosuke Narumi and Teppei Shimada watch the scene, completely paralyzed. At the last second, Yuma throws himself in front of her to protect her from the attack. The creature's claw then pierces through him, causing him to fall to his knees before her. Even wounded, he manages to gather the strength to call Nijika's name. With a smile on his face, he says he's glad she's safe. Nijika's expression twists into pure horror as she sees what happened. Soon, a desperate scream echoes through the forest, and just like that, Yuma falls lifeless to the ground, in a pool of his own blood. Domarg then reflects on how he tried to save her, acting recklessly and without any concern for himself. The older man approaches and, in an act of desperation, begs the creature to devour him. Nijika Natsume then screams for it to let her go, desperately calling out Yuma's name. As Teppei calls it a monster, Kyosuke yells, asking what the hell it did to Yuma. With a simple gesture, Domarg repels their attack with a wave of energy. The man in white watches the scene, completely shocked by what just happened. Domarg then warns that there won't be a second time, and that after eating this one, it will devour all the others. With that, the creature prepares to devour Nijika. The man in white just watches, paralyzed by the situation. Then, he apologizes, admitting that the blame for all of this is entirely his. Suddenly, the monster spits up some blood. Not understanding anything, Nijika just watches the scene in confusion. Domarg then roars in pain and violently throws the girl away. As she is thrown, Yuma suddenly appears and catches her, saying he made it just in time. As soon as he catches her, Yuma asks if she's hurt. Nijika Natsume, still in shock, asks how he survived, but he says he'll explain later and that they need to fall back. Domarg then roars in fury for having its tongue injured, and swears it won't forgive them. With that, the creature charges forward, promising it will devour them all. In the chaos of the escape, the older man who betrayed them ends up tripping and falling to the ground. The monster then turns to him and warns that it will start with him. Then, the traitor screams in pain as he is captured and devoured by the creature. As they flee, the man in white asks how he survived, since he was sure he saw him die. Yuma explains that he almost forgot, but it was thanks to an item he had. A healing aura then envelops his body, completely closing his wounds. It's then revealed to be the goddess's ring of protection, an item that fully restores HP from a near-death state. However, the strain of the sudden recovery leaves him visibly exhausted. Touching his chest, he finally understands what happened. He then remembers the moment he received the ring and thanks the tutorial goddess. Back in the present, Nijika asks why he saved her without any regard for the danger. With a smile, Yuma replies that he did it because they are obviously companions. Hearing his words, Nijika Natsume looks at him in a new light. Meanwhile, Teppei Shimada and Kyosuke Narumi continue running with the rest of the group. Once in a safe place, Yuma remarks that it's impressive the creature is still moving after taking so many bombs. The man in white then apologizes for them not being able to defeat it, but congratulates him for being the first to injure Domarg. Kyosuke despairs at the monster's strength, while Yuma deduces that Domarg's level is likely over 50. From this, he concludes that the creature's level is double theirs and that they need a countermeasure. As Nijika laments that the sacrifice tactic won't work anymore, Yuma cuts her off, saying they have an option. Teppei then smiles and confirms they have exactly what they need to turn the tables. He then explains that if they analyze the recording, they might be able to figure something out. He reveals that he recorded everything from start to finish, thinking he might capture the moment Yuma was eaten. Seeing everyone's reaction, he quickly corrects himself, saying it was just a joke and tells them to look closely. Yuma then ponders that the attack was effective, but he doesn't understand why the creature recovered so quickly. Suddenly, Teppei notices something on the screen. He then points to the image and asks what that glow at the back of Domarg's mouth is, the one that appears when it regenerates. Kyosuke wonders if that's the creature's regenerative organ, and Yuma confirms the theory after checking the rest of the footage. With that, he confidently declares that if they attack that spot, they can defeat Domarg once and for all. Nijika then agrees they need a strategy to destroy the weak spot without getting devoured in the process. Suddenly, the group is startled by a desperate scream from outside. The man in white panics, realizing the worst might have happened. Soon after, they find Domarg in the middle of the city, destroying everything in its path. The creature then roars that it doesn't care about the city anymore. With that, the monster declares it will devour all of them. The man in white laments that the townspeople will now be eaten at random now that the creature has invaded. Nijika then states that since the creature has appeared, they have no choice but to act immediately. Yuma then rallies the group, reinforcing that no matter what happens, they will attack the monster's weak spot.